So the first speaker is Kelsey McDonald. Kelsey has a master's in environmental and natural resources science degree from Cal Poly Humboldt. She did her BA in environmental studies at Scripps College. Her master's thesis was on seed dispersal of Spartina densiflora in Humboldt Bay, and she recently published a paper in the Journal of Coastal Research comparing the morphology of coastal dunes dominated by invasive European beachgrass with restored dunes. She works as an environmental scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, where she specializes in planning and monitoring restoration of sensitive vegetation communities and rare, threatened, and endangered plant species. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Kelsey. Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks so much. Excellent, thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I'm Kelsey McDonald. I'm presenting today on coastal prairie restoration and the recovery of endangered western lily, Lilium occidentale, at Table Bluff Ecological Reserve in Humboldt County. The Table Bluff Ecological Reserve Coastal Prairie Restoration Project is grant funded by the Wildlife Conservation Board, and it's a collaborative project with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Atoll Restoration Council, and the Wiyot tribe. And I want to acknowledge that this is within Wiyot Ancestral Territory, and it's really a central location between Wiki, Humboldt Bay to the north, and Wiyot, the Eel River, to the south. These two really important waterways make this potentially a really important transportation area, and it remains a really important place for the Wiyot tribe with the nearby Table Bluff Reservation just 2 properties away. And so the Wiyot tribe is an important partner in this project that has really influenced the direction of it. The Table Bluff Ecological Reserve was purchased by CDFW as part of the Ocean Ranch acquisition in 1986. It is just up the hill from the Ocean Ranch unit, and it was set aside to be managed primarily for endangered western lily. The purpose of our restoration project is to employ methods based on science and traditional ecological knowledge to restore native coastal prairie to benefit the federally and state endangered western lily and the overall ecological and cultural value of the reserve. Western lily is typically associated with music to wet, early successional coastal prairie and scrub habitats, and it occurs along the immediate coast and scattered populations between Table Bluff and Coos Bay, Oregon. CDFW owns 2 of the largest sites, Crescent City Marsh and Table Bluff Ecological Reserve. So with this being a botany conference, I didn't want to skip the plant morphology. As you can see, it has beautiful pendant red flowers with a speckled contrasting green to gold star at the center. It has recurved tepals. The stamens remain straight rather than spreading like a lot of similar looking lilies do. And it has this elongate unbranched bulb. And while it primarily reproduces by seed, it may reproduce asexually in some circumstances from broken off bulb scales. And it is a long-lived bulb, up to 25 years or more. And although it's typically about 1 meter to 1.5 meters, it can grow up to 2.5 meters in height. Here you can see it in some wetter habitat at Crescent City Marsh Wildlife Area. In this marsh habitat, the seasonal flooding prevents a lot of conifer and even willow encroachment. And so it has this really nice open canopy, and it's doing quite well at this site. Table Bluff is at the southern extent of Western Lily's range, and it also supports one of the largest populations, but it is threatened by Sitka spruce and brush encroachment. It's a much drier habitat, as you can see here, and a low percent of the plants reach the reproductive stage in these shaded habitats. It is doing well in forest openings and edge habitat at Table Bluff. And it also occurs with Pacific reed grass in this ecologically and culturally important coastal prairie, which is wonderfully diverse, as you can see here. Table Bluff also has many uncommon culturally significant plants. And these are plants that were likely tended by Native people in the past. It includes many geophytes, such as camas, as you can see here. And these plants have underground carbohydrate storage structures and underground growing points. And these plants primarily occur in coastal prairie and early successional scrub habitats, much like Western lily. To quickly go over the post-colonization history, the site was colonized in the mid-1800s. It was largely tilled for agricultural use, with the main exception being the Western lily habitat area and the areas that are forest today. It was also grazed pretty intensively by sheep and cattle, and non-native trees and other plants were introduced at this point. And as you can see, it was developed in several areas with the lighthouse and several other structures, including homesteads. A lot has changed on site since colonization. Uh, as you can see here, just since our early imagery from middle of the last century, there's been a lot of conifer encroachment. And so you can see I've outlined the current forest boundary in cyan uh, compared to what you see here in 1948. There's quite a lot of area that is now forested that was not just 70, 80 years ago. And the largest area of this is actually the Western lily habitat, which you see in orange. And this is also where we have our culturally significant coastal prairie species. And today it's just 0.1 acres of native coastal prairie habitat within that Western lily exclusion area. And this would be an early successional habitat that's maintained by mild disturbance, such as fire or native grazing. However, these excessive soil disturbances from tilling and intensive grazing limits it on one side, and on the other side, we've got a complete lack of disturbance resulting in conifer encroachment. So it's really gotten squeezed between these two areas. In the late 80s, CDFW and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service started managing this property. And there were extensive studies done at the time, and some small-scale thinning was implemented to benefit Western lily. There was also a study conducted analyzing exactly which spruce to remove to best benefit Western lily. There was some seasonal grazing implemented with a lot of benefits there. And it was also found that fencing out deer from browsing on Western lily was pretty critical. There was also some expansion of the population at this time with planting of seeds and bulbs. And while there are ups and downs in the population in this time, overall it was really a positive trajectory and was looking quite good at the time that Dave Emper, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service botanist, retired around 2012. Our goal for our restoration project is to foremost build on the successes and the studies that were previously conducted on site so that we can enhance the endangered Western lily population. We also want to go beyond that and restore a mosaic of coastal prairie and early successional habitats on site so that we can then enhance plant populations of cultural significance to the Wiyot tribe. And then finally, we want to create and implement a science and TEK-based long-term management plan. Step one was to open the canopy. So we thinned native Sitka spruce to create openings around Western lily in fall to winter of 2023, following those recommendations from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We also removed non-native trees at the time, and we removed a lot of invasive shrubs, especially Himalayan blackberry is a problem on site. Here you can see a photo of the problem before we did the restoration. The dense overhead canopy was blocking sunlight. There was dense Himalayan blackberry and some overhead shrubs that also shade and outcompete Western lily. And Western lily was not doing well in this densely shaded environment. We decided to use helicopters to remove these trees with minimal disturbance to the habitat. And this was great also because it allowed us to fly trees directly to the neighboring Table Bluff Reservation to be used as firewood for elders. And it also allowed us to fly trees directly into the Ocean Ranch estuary, which had been deprived of large wood. And so we were able to create some fish and bird habitat structures. Post thinning, I was really happy with the low level of disturbance, which you can see here. The understory is looking great. This is just the spring after tree removal. And although it's hard to see, They are pointing at Western Lily emerging in the spring. Step 2 was to reinstate disturbance. So we brought in some seasonal grazing during the winter dormancy period, as had been implemented previously. And although previous cattle grazing had shown some benefits, goat grazing had been highly effective in 2012 to 2013. And we wanted some browsers for brush. So we wanted to bring in some goats. And we also added sheep to the mix this winter. So before thinning, flowering counts were down to 10% of the peak, which was over 1,000 reproductive plants in 2013. However, in 2022, this had fallen to just 98 and then 90 in 2023. After we thinned in 2023, we were up to 147 reproductive in 2024. And so this was a 63% increase from 2023, which is great for 1 year. And we're hoping for this trajectory to continue. So in general, our thought here is that these long-lived plants need more sunshine so that they can photosynthesize, store that sugar, more successfully flower and reproduce to maintain the population. So step 3 is our experimental pilot project. Well, I should call it a pilot study because it's part of this same project. We're doing some experimental planting in plots to test the success of native species and different treatments so that we can restore the larger pasture tilled landscape to this mosaic of a coastal prairie that supports culturally significant plants and possibly even Western lily if we can find suitable soils. We are working with the Wiyot Native Plant Nursery and the Batole Restoration Council, who are propagating native plants, including coastal prairie plugs and seeds, culturally significant plugs and seeds, and Western lily. And we are monitoring treatments that include a graze area, a burn and graze area for more intense disturbance, and a control where we're doing no disturbance. We also want to test a till versus a low disturbance no-till preparation so that we can figure out if it's possible to keep as much carbon in the soil and disturb that soil biota as little as possible. We also want to test out if adding mulch is a worthwhile thing to do. So we are also fencing this area to protect Western lily from deer during this study, which we found was very important for expanding the population previously. And we hope this will be informative for our project as we move forward to restore the remaining approximately 100 acres of pasture, and as similar projects are working on the North Coast want to restore coastal prairie. We were able to implement a prescribed burn in September 2024 with CAL FIRE, as you see here. And here's what that looked like. It is a low intensity burn and kind of patchy, but we think this is great. We think that this sort of low intensity burn is likely similar to the sort of burning that may have been carried out by Indigenous people prior to colonization. So step 4 will be to incorporate our pilot project results, as well as the results of an ethnobotanical study that's being led by the Wiyot tribe. And we want to restore approximately 100 acres of this former pasture to a mosaic of coastal prairie and scrub with culturally significant plants. So we'll be implementing disturbance based on what appears to be most suitable. And we will be planting and seeding native species where appropriate and supplementing Western lily propagation. Thank you so much for your attention, and to our partners, our funder, and our many supporters. And it looks like I've got plenty of time, so I can take questions.
How do you choose which plants to reseed with when your restoration efforts? Are you choosing things that are going to be a little more hardy in the face of climate change, or just like what's most readily available?
We have chosen a mix. So some of these things are definitely not things that are particularly hardy. We want to make sure we have an emphasis on culturally significant plants that are important to the Wiyot tribe. And we're also, using Western lily, which is a difficult one potentially. And so We've got a mixture of those as well as many of the standards that you might be familiar with, like Distampsia cespitosa, Elmus glaucus, Bromus carinatus. And our intention is to monitor how well these plants do. And we'd like to incorporate as much diversity as possible. But it may be that under certain circumstances, only these more hardy and common plants do well. So that'll be a decision that'll come out of the pilot project.
Got one down front.
What was the duration of the goats, or the pattern? How, like, was it moving electrical fences? And then also, did the goats cause any issues with hardwood trees in the plots, native hardwood trees?
We didn't have any problems with the goats going after hardwood trees. We are trying to do brush reduction, so I was actually hoping they would hit the brush a little harder. Let's see. So the duration was approximately 1 month in a 6-acre fenced area. And at that time, it looked like they had consumed as much as they could reasonably do without harming themselves, and needed some supplemental feeding at the end of the month.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kelsey. Great to hear the work you're doing. Looks great. Fantastic. Thank you.